Good afternoon. We do have a quorum for the JWB Finance Committee meeting. Bernie, welcome. Wish you were here, but understand. I would like to ask Jim Milliken to please rise and let's do the national anthem, please. Or say the national anthem. Or pledge allegiance. Either way, you can sing if you'd like. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. All right, first item on the agenda is the consent approvals. Approve the minutes from October 29th Financial Committee meeting and Audit Selection Committee. Do I have a motion? Rick Butler, do I have a second? All in, with a motion and a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, let's move on to the action items. The Audit Selection Committee. Laura, would you like to walk us through this?
Thank you. Yes. We're here today to discuss the establishing the RFP evaluation factors and the contract period for the audit services RFP. As you're aware, back in July of 19, the board modified its bylaws so that the Finance Committee would serve as the Auditor Selection Committee. Having said that, at the October 29th, 2020 meeting, the Auditor Selection Committee approved that I would serve as the liaison in an advisory capacity, since the Florida statute does not allow any management or other board members serving on that committee. So I will be able to assist in gathering information and helping you in that regard. In the memo that you have before you, it highlights the timeline for the RFP and a couple of things just to point out. We will be having on June 21st, the date where we will be interviewing the finalists in the RFP process. So we are anticipating having 3 CPA firms that would meet the finalists. We've scheduled that meeting to begin at 9 a.m. and currently we are allocating 30 minutes. And in light of the COVID situation with sanitizing and keeping the firms in different rooms and so forth, our proposal would be to do a 10-minute, have them do a 10-minute presentation followed by 10-minute question and answers, and then 10 minutes to be able to sanitize and move and shift firms from one location to the other. You all have decided that you wanted to finish that meeting, which by the way is a non-public meeting. It is exempt from having to be open from the public. And following that meeting would be the Auditor Selection Committee, where you would go through the ranking process and discussions relative to those evaluations. That meeting we have scheduled to begin at 10:40, which would give us time in between the 2 meetings to again sanitize. And I realize that that's 6 months out, but we're trying to be cautious relative to that. Currently, we have that on everyone's calendar to run through 12:30, and I think it is in an abundance of caution, we might want to extend that maybe another 30 minutes, just in case we run into a snag or we've got technology issues and so forth. We can always finish up earlier and be done and you can leave, but I think it might be in our best interest to do that. So I just want to point that out. So today we're reviewing the evaluation factors. We've got to establish what those factors are. We have presented what we would consider a minimum criteria for the CPA firms, and we've listed those in there as far as them being licensed, being, practicing in the state of Florida, following the government auditing standards, obviously having experience with government audits, familiarity with the comprehensive annual financial report, and then of course, very important is they must have a peer review that they have to provide to us that they're in good standing. Round 2, you would go through the evaluation. Again, we've determined, and you're more than welcome to discuss these allocations, but the audit approach would have a weight of 35%. Experience of personnel would be 30%, firm qualifications 25%, and fees would be 10%. Round 3 would be the interviews as we discussed. The evaluation criteria as indicated, presentation would be allocated 10 points, reference checks 5, and then responses to questions and answers. The contract period is another item that the Florida statutes has addressed. And it states that you cannot have a contract that, well, it doesn't prescribe the maximum amount of terms of the contract, but when the contract is completed, you must go out for an RFP. You cannot renew. GFOA best practices recommends a 5-year contract that would allow the CPA firm to be familiar with the organization and the entity. Recommendations from staff would be a 3-year contract with 2 1-year optional renewals, which would end at a 5-year term. And I'll turn it back over to Chair for discussion.
I'd first like to just make one comment. As we talked about the amount of time that we were going to give to each one for presentations and questions, my only experience has been in non-for-profits. Now add the government to it, makes it even more. A 10 and 10 minutes may not really work well from my perspective. It might be best to leave it with a 20-minute time frame. Give them the opportunity to make their presentation and let them decide in between how much time they need to have, either with the presentation and for questions. My expectations will be that much of the presentation will be pretty standard. Mm-hmm. What we'll be really looking for is what makes them different than mm-hmm. anyone else that's providing that government service capability. It'll give us time to also ask questions around our comfort levels with them to do the work, more so than are they regulated correctly by the government? So anyway, my suggestion would be to give them a max of 20 minutes to work their presentation and be prepared for questions. And their understanding is they're going to control that time, not us.
That sounds good to me. I don't know about the other board members.
Anyone have any comments, questions on that, or anything else within the plan? Is there any, Bernie, do you have any comments? Bernie, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't. That sounds good.
Okay. With no other questions or comments on that, do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
So a second. I have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Okay, so we're approved. Let's move forward. The next item on the action items are to approve selection committee's recommendations regarding the awards for non-operating capital and capital projects RFA. So again, Laura, can you give us some explanation on that?
Yes, thank you very much. So as you're aware, the RFA was sent out for the request for capital, non-operating capital awards. That was released back in September of 2020. We had budgeted $1.25 million for this fiscal year for that award, which in comparison with the prior year was $1 million. We received 26 applications for a total of 35 projects, and the total amount of requested funds was $1.8 to $20,000 and change. The evaluation committee met on 2 occasions to review each of the grant applications. The committee consisted of Joanne Maniscola, Lori Lewis, Kelly Grossman, Shannon Phillips, and Sabrina Egton-Malloy. They presented to the executive team their scores for each project and recommendations. The criteria, excuse me, as noted in the memo, included a weight of 30 for a statement of need, 25 for project description, 25 return on investment, and 20 for cost effectiveness. One of the criteria was, in order to be eligible for the pool of money, you must have scored at least a 65 on the grant evaluation. And behind your memo, you've got a summary sheet of all the projects and those that fell above the 65 ranking. However, when going through the dollar amount to award the contracts, we were not able to award every contract or every agency that scored a project above the 65. So the executive team recommended the award of 1.25 million for a total of 23 projects, 18 projects to be fully funded, and there were 5 projects that were partially funded. The partial funding included some projects that had items in there that were not considered allowable expenses. We had other projects that, because they scored in a tie-breaking ranking right at the end of the 1.250, in order to cap the award at 1.250, there was a reduced amount for their contract. In the schedule that I've provided, you also see the geographic allocation of where those projects are coming from, as well as the type of projects. And you can see that the technology, facilities, furniture, there's a variety of needs that we found in our agencies. In the schedule that I've provided, I've added a column for your consideration for any potential additional funding. There were questions that have been raised that if we were to fund all of the projects that met the 65-point criteria, what would that dollar amount have entailed? And so if you look at your schedule, you'll see that there's a orange line that cuts off at the 1.25, and then there's another line that would take you down to the amount. That amount would be another $236,959 if you were to so approve that increase. But right now, the recommendation is for the budgeted amount of 1.25 million. I'll be glad to answer questions. I've got members from the evaluation team here as well, if you've got specific questions about any of the projects.
Are there any questions? Yes. Commissioner.
Laura, you and I had discussed, what is the amount of lapsed funds that we currently have at this time after we approved?
I'm
everything
sorry,
we've already
I
done?
didn't hear your question. Oh, the lapse. Right now, our expected lapse is at $11 million. And we had discussed at the meeting that we would, our normal lapse had been 10%. I'm sorry, that number's not right. It's 12. I'm looking for my numbers line. I think. So right now it's about 12,014,000. And we had looked at what we considered the excess lapse, which would be our normal lapse had been 10%. Our annual budget is close to 80 million. So if we were to back that off, it would be approximately 4 million. If we've spent at the board meeting last week, we spent 3,018,991, and then we spent another $88,000. So of that lapse, we've spent 3.1 million, and we're estimating that we have about 4 million. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
My point would be that, with COVID and with everything that's happened, I'd like to go ahead and fund the 236,000 from the lapsed funds. And this is an opportunity because we don't normally have this large of a lapsed fund to really help some organizations. And technology is going to be, as we know, all these Zooms. That's why I'm late. Sorry, I was on a Zoom call. And so I would recommend that we fully fund the 236 and change.
And I would say that was the recommendation of the evaluation committee to the executive team. And that's the executive team's recommendation to you. We were of the same mind for the same reasons.
And I
Jim,
would
do you
agree
have
with that. Yeah, that actually I was going to the same place that Commissioner Steele was going. I agree with that. We got the money right now. Let's put that money into the kids. Let's spend that extra 236,000 to put these programs on board. They met the qualifiers. They made the cut. They didn't make the cut of what we budgeted for. But since we have that money, I think we should move forward and put those programs in place.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I do have one. Laura, we made adjustments to others to get them within the number. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Those who are above that line, we made adjustments to their to the amount that they were going to receive. They asked for so much, we gave them a less.
Correct.
And so so I guess the question would be, is if we have these funds, do we want to back up and provide the full amounts for everyone? Or do we want to just add the 236?
Well, the
To the-
236 includes bumping up the last
Oh.
two projects that were partially funded.
The last two projects are plus adding these others to it. There were two others
Correct.
afterwards. Okay.
Correct.
Fine, I mean, that clarifies it for me. Do I have any other questions or comments?
Just one question.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just, one more clarification. I think I'm not hearing fully. You're saying that that amount includes all of the programs that were going to be funded at a reduced rate, plus the ones that made the cut. So everyone is whole, so to speak.
Everyone is whole that scored 65 with
That
except,
scored to 65.
with exception of a couple projects where there were some expense items that were not considered eligible.
Understood. Thank you.
Sorry about the masks. You can't
Yeah,
hear real well.
I'm just trying to think of the motion that needs to be made to ensure that we cover all of this. So what I'm looking for is a motion that says we are adding an additional $236,000 to the budget, and that will bring everyone above the 65 plus the two to their requested amounts are.
There
is
would
that-
be $236,959, correct?
So
Okay.
the total amount is? No,
No,
the
no, no.
total.
Total amount is 1
I
million.
mean, what I have is 486,000.
So we're going to increase thank you. We're asking for a motion to increase the budget to $1,496,000 to include the additional two proposals to the RFI and accept it going forward. Is that correct?
There are actually four proposals that would not have been funded and two that were partially funded.
Correct.
Now, so there's four additional. I only thought
Yeah,
there were two.
they're
No,
the Boys and
It's still
Girls,
within that number though.
yeah, Boys and Girls Club, CASA,
Right.
Park, and Intercultural Advocacy
Right.
Institute.
Right. If you
So
look
those
if you look
four-
at the orange line, you can see
Kind of the
after
second
that,
orange
there's
line.
four more projects.
Yeah, it's hard to see it.
So-
It is hard to see. This is the IT infrastructure that's just below the one orange line.
Yeah. 1, 4, 8, 6, 9, 59. So the total amount would be $1,486,959 would accomplish that.
Do I have a
Second.
second? I have a motion and a second. With any other comments? Then with a motion and a second, do I have a vote? For all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. So we've approved to increase it to the $1,496,000 and include all projects identified. Okay. Thank you. All right, now to discussion items. Again, Laura, this is the financial reports for October and November.
Correct. So you have the October financial statements. Keep in mind, we are still closing out and performing the audit or having the audit performed for September 30. But for the October standalone, you've got the balance sheet, you've got the monthly activity compared to budget, as well as our investment activity. Nothing alarming to see here. We've also presented the November numbers, and we have started to receive some of the ad valorem funds that have come in. But again, comparing that to our budget, and when we are doing a budget this year, a monthly budget, which is trying to be a little more accurate than taking our annual budget and divided it by 12. So what we've done is we've gone back and done some analysis in previous months and previous years, and we're using a similar percentage so that we could try to compare apples to apples, if you would. Having said that, looking at November, we're pretty much in line again with revenues and expenses. Our investments, of course, we are not earning what we had anticipated in budgeting, but that's in light of the economy. We will continue to monitor that, but our investments are all are not in high-risk areas. So I'd be glad to answer any questions regarding either October or November's financial statements.
Any questions? Bernie?
No, I got nothing.
I'm quick. Being no questions, then there's nothing to vote on, so let's continue. Chief Executive Report.
Well, we were all together last week, so I won't make this long. Just to say that in that very long list of items that were approved by this board, our very able staff are putting those into place. So we have a few contracts already in place from those items. And we have others that are a little more complicated that we're well on the way. So we don't see any barriers to implementing all of the things that you approved or the board approved last week. The other thing I would just want to put out there is at this time in the year, our staff have worked extraordinarily hard. And I'm looking at Commissioner Seal and knowing that the county staff did the same, and the Littleman Fire Department, and on and on. So I know that we're not alone in that regard. But I am really hoping that the next few weeks will be a bit lighter, and we certainly are available to do everything we need to do. But I'm hoping that there is some rest and peace that our staff get a little bit over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. We have, moving on to the open agenda, I do have one item. We're looking for future meetings, you'll have on the second page of, right behind the agenda. We need to schedule a August 2021, right? Yeah, August 2021 meeting for the Finance Committee.
Correct. We will need to hold a meeting in August to approve the budget, get started on the budget. I know you don't meet as a board in August, but you'll be getting some emails next week to try to find a date that would be good for that. We would like to have that sometime after August 19th. That would give us enough time to put the information together. So we'll look at calendars and we'll try to get that scheduled. But just, we've got the May and June scheduled, and that took us a while to get that scheduled.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, I would recommend this late in the month. One of the nice things about not having a board meeting in August is that it does enable some of the board members to travel. So not putting it in the middle of the month, but towards the end
Okay.
would make it a little bit easier. Obviously, in September, we have our 2 trim hearings and the board meeting. So as late in the month as you can would be appreciated. Thank you.
I would agree. Yes, Commissioner?
And a lot of other county-related boards, meaning like the Ford Pinellas, actually cancel August meetings. So I think the idea of doing it closer to the end of August is good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other open agenda items or open business? Again, I'd like to just say happy holidays to everyone, especially to the staff and the teams. You did work really hard this year. And we expect that you're going to work very hard next year. Things are not going to change anytime soon. That at least we can't see that. Let's hope they do. But again, I think speaking from the Finance Committee and speaking as a board member, we really appreciate everything that you've done and how hard you've worked to keep things as calm and moving forward as possible. You did a great job this past year. Again, we really appreciate it, and happy holidays to you and your families. With that, this meeting's adjourned.